Imagine a man who has spent years deciding the fates of ordinary Americans. And today he's standing in a small municipal courtroom holding a slip for a cheap parking ticket. No one understands why the air around him feels so heavy. Most mornings in Judge Caprio's court are predictable. The benches are filled with people in work uniforms and worn jackets, citations folded in their hands. At the bench, Caprio's tone is kind. A young man explains he parked at a hydrant while helping his mother. The judge trims the fine and sends him off with a warning. An older woman says she missed a sign after an eye appointment. He waives the ticket, tells her to focus on healing. Name, story, decision, next. Then, the clerk calls the next file. City of Providence versus Mr. Daniel Moretti. The side door opens. A man in a dark, tailored suit walks in. Quick, controlled steps, posture straight. The citation lies flat between his fingers, sharp crease down the middle. He steps to the microphone, adjusts it without asking, and gives a thin, professional smile. Your Honor, I'd like this to be quick. His tone is polished, confident. He stands like someone used to being on the other side of a desk, feet set, shoulders square, chin a little high. Judge Caprio glances at the screen. You're here for parking in a handicapped space without a permit, he says evenly. Is that correct? Yes, the man replies. It was a brief official stop. I'm sure we can resolve it. Several heads lift. The suit, the watch, the haircut. None of it fits the usual traffic story. People stare, trying to line up his face with some memory of a letter or a closed sign on a shop window. What's your name? The judge asks. The man's smile tightens. You have it on the screen, he says. Caprio waits. Daniel Moretti. A low murmur spreads along the benches. That's the guy from City Hall, someone whispers. He closed my cousin's shop, another says. By the door, a security officer shakes his head. This guy again? Can't believe he showed up, he mutters. For the first time that morning, the judge's expression changes. The easy warmth leaves. What replaces it is cooler, more deliberate. You work for the city, Mr. Moretti? He asks. I do, comes the clipped reply, which is why I'd prefer not to spend long on a minor ticket. The courtroom that felt almost relaxed a few minutes ago seems smaller. People lean forward. No one is scrolling now. Caprio turns back to the monitor and begins to type. Blue light reflects in his glasses as lines of text appear. He says nothing. Seconds stretch longer than they should. Your Honor, Moretti says, voice edging sharper. With respect, I don't see why. Still nothing. The judge's eyes move slowly down the screen. A crease settles between his brows and stays. Whatever he's reading, it isn't routine. At last he leans back, folds his hands on the bench, and studies the man who walked in, asking for speed. Sir, Caprio says quietly, before we continue, I need to understand one thing. Why is your name flagged in the system? He doesn't answer right away. His jaw flexes once, barely visible, as if he's weighing whether to cooperate or dismiss the question entirely. I believe your system already has everything you need, he finally says. I work for the city. The room reacts like someone dropped a coin on a church floor. Tiny sound, but everyone hears it. A few people exchange glances. One woman folds her arms with a sigh that says she's been waiting years for a moment like this. Caprio steeples his fingers. In what capacity? Moretti exhales, not loudly, but with the resignation of someone forced into what he considers a pointless explanation. I'm the Director of Municipal Oversight and Regulatory Affairs. A ripple moves through the crowd, recognition mixed with irritation. Older attendees shake their heads. They know exactly what that title means. It's the department that stamps, delays, approves, denies. The department that decides whether a small shop opens or shuts forever. The one where a single missing line on a form can ruin a month. Caprio's expression remains neutral. I see. And the day of this citation, why did you park in a spot reserved for individuals with disabilities? Moretti's answer arrives without hesitation. Because I was conducting official business. That should suffice. The judge narrows his eyes slightly. Official business where? A flicker of annoyance crosses Moretti's face. Across the street. Caprio taps a key. Behind him, a screen displays a timestamp. An officer hands up a small printed capture from a street camera. In it, Moretti walks out of a coffee shop, cup in one hand, pastry bag in the other. No briefcase, no folder, no sign of a meeting. Caprio lifts the photo with 2 fingers. It was a meeting, Moretti snaps. Not everything happens around conference tables. A few soft chuckles escape the benches. Someone whispers, "Yeah, right," under their breath. Even the clerk hides a smirk behind a stack of documents. Moretti stiffens, as if the laughter hits him harder than the judge's questions. "How long have you been with the city?" Caprio asks. "Too long," he replies. "Long enough to understand how people behave when they want something from you." The tone is sharp, almost cutting. Not just weariness, bitterness. A defensive edge forged from years of complaints and expectations. It hangs in the room like the aftertaste of metal. Caprio studies him carefully, then scrolls through the digital file. Line after line flashes by. Requests, notes, dates. Until something stops him. His hand pauses on the mouse. He leans closer to the screen. The courtroom's ambient hum quiets naturally, as if everyone senses a shift. "Mr. Moretti," Caprio says, voice lower now, "there are multiple entries here marked unresolved." Moretti's shoulders tense. The judge clicks again. A new window opens. Reports, summaries, citizen forms written in shaky handwriting, and typed statements alike. Caprio doesn't lift his eyes as he speaks. "These are complaints." A dry swallow moves down Moretti's throat. "People file all sorts of nonsense, Your Honor." Caprio finally looks up. "And these weren't filed years ago. They're recent." A few people in the benches lean forward, trying to follow the judge's gaze. The judge scrolls further, then stops once more. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he says, "Mr. Moretti, we'll need to talk about these." The man's face drains slightly, the first true crack in his polished composure, while the room absorbs the realization that this ticket is only the surface of something deeper. The tension settles like dust before a coming storm. The scene breaks. The courtroom feels heavier now, as if the walls themselves have drawn closer. Caprio straightens the stack of pages in front of him, each movement deliberate. "Mr. Moretti," he says evenly, "I have several notes here from residents, all filed within the last 18 months. The words land like a hammer wrapped in velvet. Moretti's breathing shifts, subtle, faster, the kind of change only visible when someone tries hard to hide it. His fingers curl slightly at his sides, knuckles whitening. Before the judge can continue, a voice rises from the benches. "Your Honor, may I speak?" A man in his 70s stands, leaning on a cane. His jacket is neatly buttoned, but his posture tells the story of harder years. The courtroom attendant looks to Caprio for a signal. The judge gives a small nod. The old man clears his throat. "I know this man," he says, pointing, not aggressively, but with a hand that trembles from a mixture of age and indignation. "He shut down my shop last year. 40 years we were open, all gone in a week." A stunned silence follows. Moretti whips his head around, eyes sharp. "You violated the code," he fires back. "The violation was clear. Don't turn this into theater." But the rebuttal lacks the composure he had earlier. The edge in his voice isn't authority. It's fear bleeding through authority's mask. The judge watches both men carefully. Something about Moretti's response doesn't sit right. Caprio looks down and picks up one of the complaints. He reads it slowly, his tone level. Alleged intimidation. Claim states that the permit was withheld until an additional, quote, processing fee was offered. A ripple spreads through the room. Not laughter this time, disbelief. Moretti cuts in, quickly. Those were administrative adjustments, standard procedure. Caprio lifts his gaze with a calm that carries more weight than raised volume ever could. "Standard procedure," he repeats, not accusing, just letting the words hang long enough for the room to form its own judgment. The clerk hands him another sheet. Caprio scans it, then another, each one adding to a growing unease. Then he sees a highlighted line. He hesitates. There it is. The moment the story tilts. "Mr. Moretti," he says slowly, "why is there a federal inquiry note attached to your profile?" The man's confidence evaporates in real time. A flush drains from his face, leaving a pale cast beneath the courtroom lighting. Someone in the back whispers, "Federal? What did he do?" Moretti swallows. "That investigation was closed," he says, voice thin. Caprio does not blink. It says, "pending." The courtroom stirs, a soft wave of shock sweeping through it. People glance at each other, connecting dots that only now seem obvious. The attitude, the urgency, the flag in the system. Moretti steadies himself on the table, but it doesn't help. His stance, once rigid and proud, looks ungrounded, like he's standing on a floor that's suddenly tilted. Caprio folds his hands. When he speaks again, it's quiet, almost gentle, which somehow makes it more devastating. "Mr. Moretti, I need you to tell me exactly what happened last spring." A faint tremor crosses Moretti's mouth. His eyes dart briefly toward the exit, then toward the clerk, then back to the judge, as if searching for an escape that isn't there. No one moves, no coughs, no shifting feet. The entire room holds its breath. The badge of authority he wore so effortlessly when he walked in now looks borrowed, too big for his shoulders. He opens his mouth, but nothing comes out. And in that trembling pause, the mask finally begins to crumble. The scene cuts. For several seconds, the only sound is the faint buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead. Moretti inhales sharply, trying to steady himself, but the composure he arrived with is long gone. His shoulders sit unevenly, his tie slightly askew, as if the fabric itself resists staying aligned with him. "Your Honor," he finally says, "this has nothing to do with a parking violation." Caprio leans forward, elbows on the bench, eyes steady. "It does," he replies, "when your profile is marked for potential misconduct." Moretti's lips tighten, and he glances around the room, maybe hoping the crowd's presence will pressure the judge into narrowing the discussion. But this court has seen too many stories to be swayed by discomfort. "What happened last spring?" Caprio presses. Moretti straightens, though it's the stiff posture of someone bracing for impact. "There was a misunderstanding involving permit allocations. A few business owners complained. Someone, out of spite most likely, sent a letter to the federal ombudsman. That's all. But his voice betrays him. It trembles at the end, soft enough that only people in the first rows catch it. Before Caprio can respond, A woman stands from the second row, mid-50s, hands clenched around a purse strap. "That's not all," she says, voice steady but trembling with indignation. "He shut down my husband's food truck, said our paperwork was incomplete. We spent weeks fixing it. Then we learned he approved the exact same permit for his friend, using our documents." Gasps scatter across the benches like sparks. Moretti's head swivels toward her, his expression a blend of shock and fury. "That is absolutely false," he insists. "You all think regulations are optional. They're not. I enforce the law exactly as written." But every word sounds defensive, brittle. Caprio nods toward the bailiff. "Please bring me folder 14B from the clerk's office." That instruction lands like a thunderclap. Moretti jerks his head toward the judge. "Your Honor, that file contains internal—" "You don't get to set the limits today," Caprio interrupts, voice even. The bailiff disappears down the hall. The courtroom sits in charged stillness. A few attendees whisper names, businesses, memories, threads tying themselves into a larger pattern no one had seen laid bare before this morning. When the bailiff returns, he places a thick, worn folder on the judge's bench. Caprio opens it calmly, scanning the contents. Inside are memos stamped with time codes, signatures, and notations from oversight officers. One line stands out: unauthorized approvals issued without supervisory clearance. Another, deliberate delays recorded. Potential coercion, further review recommended. And a third, circled in red ink: bribery indicators observed. Evidence inconclusive. Monitoring advised. Caprio closes the folder halfway and looks up. Moretti is no longer masking panic. His eyes dart across the room, landing nowhere. "You all act like the city runs on goodwill," Moretti blurts suddenly, voice breaking through the silence. "Do you think things happen by magic? People bend rules every day. I kept order. I kept everything from collapsing." His voice cracks on the last word. The benches react with a mix of disbelief and rising anger. Someone mutters, "Order! He calls that order?" Caprio waits until the noise settles. "Sir," he says, calm as a winter stone, "this isn't order. It's misuse of authority. And if these documents are accurate, it goes further than that." The judge closes the folder completely, placing both hands on top of it. His next words land with surgical precision. "For the first time today," he says, "I think I understand why you're really here." Silence expands through the room, dense, unyielding, stretching across every bench and corner. Moretti lowers his gaze, and the scene ends on that single, unraveling breath. The folder remains on the bench, its edges slightly frayed, as if thousands of fingers have touched it over the years. But right now, all eyes are on the man who once walked in with the assurance of someone untouchable. Caprio folds his hands. "Mr. Moretti, there are too many complaints here to ignore. How do you explain them?" For the first time, Moretti doesn't snap back. He sinks a little, not visibly collapsing, but softening in a way that betrays exhaustion. His voice, when it comes, is thin. "People lie," he murmurs. "People exaggerate when things don't go their way." The judge doesn't react, not yet. He opens a small sheet clipped to the back of the file. Not a typed accusation, something more intimate. A handwritten note in shaky script, written in blue ballpoint pen. Caprio reads it silently, jaw tightening a fraction. Then he lifts his eyes. This was submitted by an elderly woman. She wrote that she asked you for an extension on a permit so her husband could schedule surgery. She said you laughed. A collective intake of breath sweeps through the room. Even those who came for their own cases sit frozen. Moretti shakes his head, but it's weak, almost spiritless. "I don't remember that," he says. I wouldn't." But he never finishes the denial. He can't hold the judge's gaze, nor the gaze of the public behind him. He stares at a scuff mark on the floor, as if it might swallow him whole. Caprio sets the note down gently. "Positions of authority don't grant us privilege," he says, his tone firm without theatrics. "They grant us responsibility, and according to these reports, that responsibility was mishandled." Something changes in Moretti at those words. Not defensiveness, not the brittle arrogance from earlier. Something quieter. A crack where truth leaks out before he can stop it. "You think I wanted this job?" he says, almost whispering. "You think anyone dreams of dealing with the city's mess? Every day people came to my office angry, demanding shortcuts, begging for favors, cursing when I couldn't help. Everyone wanted something. No one cared about the toll it took." There's no triumph in the room now, just a strange, conflicted sympathy. A recognition that power can twist, not only outward, but inward. He swallows hard. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing people. I just saw problems. And then I became exactly the kind of official I used to despise. His eyes glisten, not from tears, but from a rawness he can't tuck away anymore. Caprio lets the silence stretch long enough for the truth to settle. Then he says, "I'm giving you an opportunity to speak honestly. This moment matters more than the fine." Moretti nods once, a small, resigned movement. "I didn't come here because of the ticket," he admits. "I came because I assumed you'd do what others did. Smooth it over, make it go away. Let me walk out untouched." He inhales shakily. "I was wrong." Someone in the back wipes their eyes. The clerk stops typing, hands hovering over the keyboard, caught in the humanity of it. Caprio reaches for his gavel but doesn't lift it. Instead, he speaks with the gravity of someone who has spent a lifetime measuring fairness. "The fine stays," he says, "but that's not your real punishment." A pause spreads through the courtroom, taut as a stretched wire. "Your real punishment," he continues softly, "is that, for the first time in years, people finally saw you." The words settle like a verdict far heavier than any monetary penalty. Moretti's shoulders slump. Not in defeat, more like someone who finally, painfully, understands. Caprio finishes, "You owe the city more than money. You owe it decency." From the benches, a single voice murmurs, barely audible, "About time." The scene holds for a heartbeat, and then breaks, as the weight of truth fills the room. Caprio finally reaches for the gavel, though he doesn't strike it. Instead, he makes a simple notation on the record, his voice steady as he states, "Case concluded. Fine recorded." It should feel routine, but nothing about the atmosphere resembles routine now. People remain seated longer than usual, as if they need time to absorb what they've witnessed. Even the faint echo of papers being shuffled seems muted, respectful. Moretti steps back from the microphone. He moves slow, almost cautious, like someone learning to navigate his own weight. His earlier sharpness is gone. Every line in his face looks softer, worn down, humbled. He turns to leave, but before he reaches the aisle, the elderly man with the cane, the one who spoke earlier, lifts a hand. "Sir," he calls gently. Moretti stops, stiffens. The courtroom watches in a hush thick enough to feel on the skin. The old man takes a moment to catch his breath. Then, with a tired but sincere voice, he says, "I forgive you." A collective ripple moves through the room, not shock, but something deeper, unexpected. Forgiveness uttered quietly in a place built for judgment carries a different weight. Moretti blinks, stunned. "Why?" he asks. Not defensive, not angry, just bewildered. The old man gives a small shrug. "Because someone has to be better first." The line lands with the softness of a feather and the force of a hammer. It doesn't excuse anything, but it shifts the air, just enough to let something human through. Moretti can't speak. He simply nods, a tiny movement that looks like it costs him effort. He turns again toward the exit. As he passes the doorway, he slows. Someone has left a crumpled cup and a scrap of wrapper on the floor near the wall, one of those small bits of litter people step around without noticing. But Moretti notices. He bends down and picks it up. Not dramatically, not for show. As if compelled by some instinct he hadn't felt in years. He drops it into a nearby trash bin, then straightens with a faint exhale. The gesture is tiny, but in the silence of that courtroom, it echoes louder than a speech. Caprio watches from the bench, eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion, but in reflection. It's the kind of gesture he knows won't fix a lifetime of choices, but maybe hints at a shift. People begin to rise from the benches. A few walk slowly, speaking in low tones. Never seen something like that. Maybe he'll change. That judge. He knows how to reach people. The soft scrape of shoes against the floor mixes with the creak of wooden benches as the room begins to empty. Even after everything, no one rushes. They move as though leaving a place of worship after a heavy sermon. Caprio closes the folder, taps it once on the desk, and sets it aside. He's preparing for the next case when a uniformed officer steps quietly into the room. The officer approaches the bench and places a thick envelope beside the judge's hand. A simple label is written across it. Federal Inquiry. Update. Caprio freezes mid-motion. His fingers rest lightly on the envelope as though it's carrying heat. A voice from the doorway, soft, uncertain, asks, "Judge, is that about the man from today?" Caprio doesn't answer. He simply stares at the envelope, the weight of everything lingering in the air. The courtroom stands half empty, murmurs fading into the distance, a faint rustle of someone's coat, the only sound left. And then, silence. The kind that holds questions, not answers. Cut to black.